Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Growth and Scaling Sessions. Today, I am so happy to have three guest speakers here with me today to contribute to the conversation that we're going to be talking about, which is the most foundational piece of your business. It should be the most foundational piece of your business. I see so many businesses not understanding exactly who their client avatar is, who their client persona, who their target audience really is. And this is such a huge issue because a lot of companies spend a lot of time and energy wasting dollars and ad spend and other development fees trying to attract a persona that they don't fully understand. Sometimes it's too broad, sometimes it's too niche, very rarely. But in every scenario, you as a business founder or you as an operator of a business need to understand who exactly you're trying to serve and why. So today we have got an amazing panel of not only business founders, but marketers and people trying to nail down their perfect avatar. So let's start by bringing in one at a time. We got Maurice Buchanan. Maurice, tell us who you are and what's your business.
Hey, Todd, thanks for having me. I'm Maurice Buchanan. I'm the owner of Work Gym, which is just a general fitness gym with an emphasis in boxing and MMA, and we are out of Minnesota.
I love it. I love it. Boxing gyms are seriously one of the coolest places. It's surprising what a full body workout it is.
Right.
And it's good self-defense too while you're at it.
Yes.
I love it. Maurice, thanks for being here. Our next guest panelist is Jorge Soto. Jorge, tell us who you are and what you do.
How are you? Thanks so much for the invite, Todd. Yeah, so Jorge or George Soto, co-founder of AssetMule.ai. We're building a tool that allows marketing teams to create sales collateral in a really beautiful interface and then easily share it with their sales team to be able to further personalize it. And, one of the sort of ways I've heard it described is like Canva for B2B sales collateral creation, and it has some workflow or collaboration tools around that. So really excited to be here.
I love it. I love it. That's a cool sounding product. I cannot wait to check it out. And last but not least, Eric Jackson Sarkany. Tell us who you are and what do you do?
Thanks so much for having me, Todd. I am the senior manager of digital marketing at a company called CarData. We are a mileage reimbursement, vehicle reimbursement technology company based out of Toronto, Canada.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. So all three of you are very different backgrounds, which I love to have on a panel. It just brings a whole different flavor to the discussion. Let's start though by really understanding what is this problem we're trying to solve here today on this panel. How many of you truly understand who your persona is? Who's your avatar? And Eric, let's start with you because you're in the big screen already. Who do you guys target? I mean, obviously, the name of your company kind of gives it away, but who are you targeting with what you do?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a lot of confusion sometimes around who you're targeting to sell to and who your actual end user might be, because it might be the same persona, but in often cases like ours, it is not. So we're typically, our target avatar, if you will, or our ICP is going to be finance executives or HR leaders that, take care of their employees' benefits and travel expenses and things like that. But what we often find is it's both. No deal goes through with just one of those personas because they both have to kind of manage these programs together.
Okay. And why is it so important for you to understand who that buyer is? Because I was actually off in my head. I was thinking cardata.co, maybe you're a dealership program or working with dealerships, but totally not. This is cool. Help us understand. How did you dive into this?
How did we dive into into this industry?
Well, like how do you target this avatar? Like, how did you come up with the description? Like, what problem did you set out to solve with identifying this avatar?
So the biggest one is going to be that most vehicle reimbursements are taxable benefits, right? So if you offer your employees car allowances and things like that, often you're you and your employees are paying tax on that. So we looked at IRS compliancy, and in Canada, the CRA compliancy, looking at what types of programs would get rid of that pain point for
Gotcha.
employers, right? Which ones would be tax-free, eliminate the need for manual mileage tracking and all that kind of stuff. And then it came down to who are the people that are impacted the most by those pain points. Finance, because they're wasting money and they don't like that. HR, because when the employees aren't happy, HR has to take care of that. So that's kind of how we narrowed in on those personas.
Cool. And what do you do actively to try to help them? Like, what is your problem solution?
So our solution is that we're extremely customizable with our vehicle reimbursement programs, because every business is different. Whether it's some drivers drive more than others, drive different types of vehicles, company cars versus your own personal vehicle. So that's always something that we're kind of having to educate people on, is talk about the options they have and how it doesn't have to be just black or white, right? Like you can customize your program to fit your business, which I think is the part that is missing the most, is that people don't think that that's an option.
Right.
A lot of it is education, just saying, hey, did you know that you can do this?
Cool. Well, those are important things for every business to know. And Maurice, will you help us understand? I mean, you're kind of hitting the fitness industry from a different angle than the norm.
Mm-hmm.
How did you decide to do that? Who did you want to end up serving when you started this gym?
Well, Todd, what we really want to focus on is the simplicity of health and wellness and fitness, and how it's accessible to everybody. Because right now, especially in our industry with social media, there's so much going on, because it's such an easy industry to get into since the birth of like cell phones and influencers. So there's a lot of money to be grabbed, but the focus with a lot of people who are trying to just get in, it's not so much of getting people like result based. They can kind of get into this industry for other reasons. So they use health and fitness as a vehicle to be a model or represent a clothing brand, or to sell supplements or something else. But the overall focus of like trying to be healthy and being in better shape or feel better or have, better overall wellness for your body or in the people around you, that can get lost. And so when people are tuning in and you're watching on social media, it's hard to grasp what attractive, in shape person and what their focus is. So we want to kind of get back to, hey, this is easily accessible for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are and where you're coming from and where you're starting. If you have the right mindset as far as just being disciplined and holding yourself accountable, those are usually like our target market for people, because it's easy to get involved with this and look at something and be like, okay, I'm going to get this done in 2 weeks, or I'm going to get this done in 30 days, because like that's the big push that people push. And you can make a lot of money by pushing 30-day programs, 2-week programs. But when you kind of get down to it, what was the overall result? Did the people that bought your product or bought your service, did they get any results? Or do they still look the same? Do they still feel the same? If you went offline, or if you cease to exist, can they take what they bought or got your service, and can they carry that going forward? And a lot of times, if you don't establish that going in, the overall result that people are going to get is going to kind of be minimized, or just come to a complete stop as it is. So when we first are talking to people, it's really establishing like that base of understanding like what this entails, the discipline involved, and that this is a forever thing. There's no space or spot where you just stop taking care of yourself, and it's hard.
Agreed.
And it's really hard.
Well, there is a point at which a lot of people stop, and that's usually when they start getting a little worn out.
Because and that's what we talk to. They're like, okay, I'm going to do my 30 days, and then I'm done. It's just like, you're made out of organic material. Like, it just doesn't work that way. You constantly are deteriorating as we get older.
If we're not strengthening it, we're deteriorating. Is that what you're saying?
It pretty much like something like that. You're pretty much trying to slow this thing down, and there's ways you can slow it down. You can grow it. But just because of just everything around us is so fast. Everything is so fast, so accessible. And your human body it's really, really old. It's a very, very old machine. It takes a long time for it to get the gist of things and going forward. And if you don't continue that going forward, you start to kind of come back. So our avatar for people is really sitting down and explaining those things to people, and not kind of, you want to help everybody, but people who are looking for something really quick and
Right.
fast, you just know in the long run it's just not going to work. And then when they look back and say, well, I spent 60 days on this, I thought this was going to be over with. And it's
Right.
like, this is forever. Like
It's forever.
It never stops. So that's the people you got to kind of get interested in and market this business to, because those are the ones that are going to be successful and get the best results for what they pay for.
So Maurice, I want to come back to you because I think you've got an interesting conversation to have about nailing your target, because you just basically brought up the entire human race as your potential client avatar,
Right.
which is a little broad.
Right.
And so we're going to try and narrow that down today while we're
Right.
talking. But Jorge, you're just launching. I mean, you've got a brand new business you're launching, and you've got a very specific offering that and a pain point you're solving for. How are you trying to identify your avatar? What are you looking for?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is that, within B2B, it's especially with a lot of the tools out there that give you contact information and ideal profile or ideal customer profile information, you can essentially, target those folks, I think, in a easier way, in my experience, than the consumer market, which, is so broad, and finding that information and also penetrating that or getting in contact with consumers, I've found is a lot more challenging.
Right.
But we run what we'll call like customer discovery, right? Customer development, and you probably heard in the startup world, finding product market fit and those sort of things.
Right.
It is a process. It is a full-on sales process beforehand. And I say sales process just given that it has a variety of steps where, you have that essentially, that part of the top of the funnel where
Right.
you're reaching out to a particular, avatar, as you said, or persona, right? And
Right.
reaching out to them and conducting this research. It's essentially a research in the beginning. So that's what we've been doing the last couple months. We've just been focused on a particular thesis, which is, we're building this tool to allow marketers at B2B, and it doesn't have to be B2B, long term, but to your point, we're very much, starting very niche. And we're building this tool for those personas that do XYZ. Well, that's our thesis. And now we have to go out and validate. And so, we're essentially talking to hundreds of those personas over the next few months,
Love it.
understanding do they see this pain point, right? Do they live this? Or is it just something that we found a niche use case for, and it's not big enough, right? So there's a lot of different variables, but that's what we're doing.
I love it. This is a fun conversation with the three of you because we're really coming from three very different angles. Eric is a very, very hyper niche HR solution that's helping them with their tax deductions, their write-offs. He's kind of hitting a very specific person inside of a company. Maurice is a local, regional, targeted demographic that he's trying to hit everyone that's deteriorating all day, every day. and Jorge, you're still in that exploratory phase where you're really trying to dive in and understand what those actual pain points are versus your hypothesized pain points that you're trying to solve for.
Yep.
So Eric, I'm curious. You've been at this for a while. You've been very hyper niche and targeting. Looking at Jorge and his scenario, what could he be doing better to help, maybe get quicker clarity on who his perfect client really is?
Yeah, honestly, I think, and this is something that one of my marketing leaders kind of always told me, was not to focus too much on perfection, right? Yeah, because we're probably never going to get it right the first time. and even
Right.
Car Data being a 20-plus-year-old company, our avatar still changes, right? But you got to start with something. So you just kind of get it out there and see if you hit or not. And what aspects was like, okay, well, maybe these few things were bang on for our persona and these few things were way off. And you just keep tweaking using, your existing customer database, investing in intent tools that can help tell you accounts that or people that may be taking similar steps to what your customers were taking before they became customers, to help you kind of better nail down who you should be targeting.
I love it. That's great advice. Jorge, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean the perfection, absolutely. And the market changes all the time, right?
Right.
And so you might have an initial thesis that then evolves because of a variety of different variables. I think one of the things that we find in like B2B or selling, software to businesses, and this I don't think this is specific to software, is that that end user. Eric mentioned the end user. Is one persona, and then the actual buyer is another, and there's multiple stakeholders involved in making these purchasing decisions at a company, which I think is distinctly different than consumer purchasing behavior. And so having to understand that's another variable in this ideal customer profile, right, at the
Right.
company level. So you have all these humans who work at the company that do various things, and then you have the company at the high level. So you have that company level avatar, but then you have these sub avatars, for example, that work within the company
Right.
that determine that purchasing behavior. So figuring all that out is complex, of course, and it's an iterative process. And the last thing I wanted to say was, like, at one company, the stakeholders, titles, those sort of things that would be involved in purchasing and using your product might be different at another, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so mapping all that stuff out and trying to find the commonalities and those sort of trends or those patterns is so important.
Well, Jorge, you bring up a really good point, and Eric, you kind of implied this, and Maurice, we're going to get to you next. But one of the things that I love about this conversation is that there are lots of different personas floating around your business. Some personas are your client avatar, your client persona. Some are your referral network persona. Some are going to be the people that just are already servicing the people you want to service, who make great strategic alliance partners with that kind of get you going. I've had several guests on our podcast. We have a sister podcast that goes along with this live series that we do. And you can check it out here at thegaspodcast.com. But one of the things that I hear all the time from the founders that we have on those discussions is, my business really didn't take off until X, Y, or Z happened. And in almost every case, it's this avatar conversation. It didn't really take off until I totally dialed in the specific type of client that I really wanted in my gym, or the specific client that I wanted to hit with my HR. There was an industry where they have a lot of people driving, and I needed to know who this was. And that's when things really took off. So Maurice, I want to ask you, as you've been listening to the conversation, I know there's a lot of stuff going on in your head right now.
Right.
Who is your perfect client? Like, you've got guys that want to be macho and box and hit each other. Yep. You got women who want to defend themselves. Like, how are you kind of hitting these different avatar models amongst all the people that are slowly deteriorating every day?
Yeah, it's hard to get away from it, Todd, and it's hard to kind of like file it down, because when you get down to those things, like, we have two different sides of our gym. We have, on one side, we have actually professional athletes who, like, this is how they make money. This is how they feed their families.
Right.
And so for that, the discipline involved with that, on top of also understanding that it's also a business. So, so like your promotion, your social media page. So when you bring guys in, they may be extremely talented as what they do, as far as what they're physically capable of do, but you also have to educate them on the business sense of things, because how you represent yourself on social media, that's how you get fights, that's how you get promotions, that's how you get sponsors, that's how you sell tickets. So all of that has to all come together, because we've experienced where you have like a physical phenom coming to the gym, and then all of a sudden you look and they don't have a social media presence, or they have a social media presence that's not conducive to getting sponsors or getting, signed to a deal. So you just can't have, and like sometimes educating some of those guys on that side of our business it's tough. It's like, well, I'm a good fighter. I'm good at this. I should be able to just get fights. But like things cost money, tickets cost money, venues cost money, and they are trying to sell this ticket. So you find out that sometimes a harsh reality, like a guy that's 10-0 that has 100,000 followers versus someone who might be 5-6 and has 500,000 followers, they most likely could get more fights because there's more visibility on their page, and you're going to sell more tickets to the 500,000 people versus the 100,000 people. So
Maurice, sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead. So on that side of our business, it's that component of, how long have you been fighting for, and also where are you trying to go with this? Because to be a professional athlete, especially with fighting, is a harsh grind. It really is. The very, people kind of just see everything online, and when they see the big, like the Floyd Mayweather fights, and they see the MGM Grand and it's exploding, very, very few people get to that point. It's just like the NFL. So it starts off very small, amateur, and you're taking a lot of punishment. You can take a lot of damage in your early stages if you don't train properly, if you don't take the right fights. You got to be strategic in what you do. So when we bring guys in, we look at the whole package, not just your physical representation, not just what you're able to do in the ring or in the cage, but how is your business sense as you're going forward? How do you view this thing? And do you view it as a business? Do you view it as just like a hobby or something that you're just interested in? Because if you don't view it as a business, you're not going to go far as a professional athlete.
So Maurice, I'm understanding exactly what you're saying, but I need to understand better who your client is, because you're helping boxers. It sounds like, so at the beginning of the conversation, and I'm going to pick on you just a little bit because I want to help. I want you to walk away with something really valuable here. And I want people watching this to really pick up on this. Beginning of the conversation, you're helping the general populace who's deteriorating gain more strength and put more habits in place that will keep them healthy for longer. Now you're talking about coaching amateur boxers into being a professional.
Right.
Which is it? You can't serve everybody. You can't serve everybody.
But like I said, Todd, that's the two sides of our business. We have professional athletes, and then we also have general fitness, and I train both.
Okay.
So it's going to be different on each side. So we service both those things at the gym.
Now, Jorge, let me ask you, is this smart of Maurice to do this? Or is it smarter for Maurice to jump in and really hone in on the one with the occasional? I'm just kind of curious, because I find when I get into two very different avatars, I have a hard time when people come to my website or come to my anything and they see two things, they get confused and they turn away. What are your thoughts about that, Jorge? I'm kind of curious.
It's hard for me to say because I don't know. There's a lot of variables involved, like how long the business has been around.
4 years.
What's the market look like? So I think, it's hard for me to say if it's like, I don't know that industry. However, I think one way to think about it is, you have premium clients, like in software, we have enterprise. The way we service enterprise or customer tiers is different than a long tail, smaller SMB type user or customer.
Right.
I think there is a world where, depending on maturity of the business and a lot of other variables, that you can service two types of markets or avatars. Now, is it the same product? Like if you're having to support two different websites or two different products, to your point, messaging is tough. I mean, this is one of the biggest problems all the time. And I've been through this 1,000 times over 20 years, which is you have like a self-serve product-led growth product that, that costs $5. Let's just say it, $5 a month. And then you have that same product. You now have a plan that you're trying to sell to the Pepsis of the world. And you don't want Pepsi, I'm just throwing that out there, of course, to pay $5 a month, right? You want an enterprise package. It's the same product, but that's packaged in a way that now is being sold to a premium avatar, a premium customer. Almost every time that I participated in that, you know, and I've always been part of startups, right? So, you know, I did work at Twitter at one point, and it was still like a growth stage business. So it's, you know, when you're a much larger business, you have different business units. You have a business unit or a product that is generating enough revenue that then you can take on these like essentially risks,
Right.
targeting specific other customer types. But what I was going to say was every time I've ever been part of it in an early stage startup, it's been a problem because it's hard to, like, to your point, Todd, be able to create a marketing message that then speaks to two different, you know, profiles, right? Two different avatars.
Right.
That's what I've run into. So I tend to focus on one, but again, I don't know how far the professional boxer or the aspiring boxer, amateur boxer is versus like my wife. She actually, it was interesting, Maurice, my wife, she does training 3 times a week, you know,
Right.
with boxing training, right? So what's, you know, from a product execution perspective, and
Right.
you know, how different is servicing her versus servicing an amateur, you know, someone who's trying to actually professionally box. I don't know, but there's a lot of those variables.
Yeah, I love a quick response, Maurice, and then we'll jump to Eric and get his feedback.
Absolutely. So with that, just to speak for everybody, too, Jorge, it's like it's not too much different because the skills that your wife is going to learn will be the same skills that a professional boxing fighter would learn. Just the intensity is different, the duration is different, the focus is different. But if you need to work on your footwork as a boxer, you need to work on your footwork if you're going to do self-defense too.
Right.
What a lot of people don't know is that, and because it's so polarized, and when you have like these really high-profile fighters or athletes at your gym, it's kind of seen as like, oh, only professional athletes go there. But
Right.
most fighting gyms, most martial art gyms are paid for by the general population who are interested in coming in. The worlds all come together.
Gotcha.
So whether you're a beginner grappler or you're a high-level black belt grappler, the basic fundamentals of what you're going to learn are going to be the exact same. So when we have classes with boxers and MMA fighters, you have beginners, you have experts, because it's such a community feel with martial arts. Everyone's trying to help each other. So you'll see a person who fought last night, Saturday night on TV, be with someone who just walked into the door, because they're going to all learn, because you got to learn those basic fundamentals all together. They all blend well together. And it's not really common knowledge that when you know those things, it's just seen as only the pros train here. It's like, they train there, but if you go, it's going to be mostly general population people learning from the pros, wrestling or sparring with the pros as well, as they learn and they get their feet under them and trying to learn this skill set as well.
And that's well spoken for a man who's been running this for 4 years. I think it, you know, from the appearance, I think Eric and I were both freaking out for a second there, thinking, dude, you're confusing people. Eric, what are your thoughts before and after that statement?
Definitely. Like my first thought is, oh, I don't know where this is going to go, but I totally understand. Like the foundation's the same. What I would like be really interested in doing if that were my business is making sure that I was constantly analyzing the ROI of these two different sides of the business and figuring out what is your cost per acquisition for your general person off the street versus somebody wanting to go pro, and then using that to decide what your fastest growing piece of your business is and your most profitable piece is. If it turns out that, you know, the general public is the most profitable, then
by
you know,
far,
your marketing
without
dollars.
question.
Yeah,
by far.
I love it. No, this is so helpful, and I hope that those watching, you know, throw some comments in the chat, questions, what you think of this conversation, because I just think that Maurice has been doing this for 4 years. He knows it way better than I do, way better than Eric does. But it's interesting that in his vertical, in his space, there is this I could totally see what you're talking about. There's this attraction for the amateur or for the casual kickboxer type, I want to learn how to defend myself person, to train in the same gym as a pro.
Right.
I can see that actually being a very value added thing for your avatar. Of, I'm guessing a lot of your support comes from the general community, that population that wants to learn how to fight like so-and-so who's in your gym.
And that's like, and Todd, like
Is
that's
that
a
right?
big piece of it. Is like the credibility of the fighters you have kind of gives you, and it's not 100% always, reliable on that, but
Sure.
it's that. But if you have successful fighters in your gym, more people want to come and be a part and take on self-defense classes
Okay.
for those people. And but by far, the general population of any martial art gym is what breaks up the pretty much the financial foundation of it, because with fighting or any professional athletic endeavor is it's you're an injury away, or you're a burnout away, or your money away, like a lot of
Right.
so you can't 100% depend on that. And even and the fighters know that too, because like it's a hard grind in the beginning, so you have to supplement that, because that's not enough. Just having a popular person at your gym, it's just not enough to grow your business, and it's not enough to financially support it. So you have to have the general population come in. But the fighters that are there who have been successful, that is the enticing part, because I'm going to learn from someone who knows what they're doing, whether that be the coach or whether it be, so like they come together. So like, because people come and they're like, hey, I saw you last night. I saw you fight. I saw you do this move. Okay. And it's just, it creates such an environment, because like I get to work hands with a professional athlete. So that component just grows just about just the general population base as well. And it also grows the professional fighting base, because they love working with the general population as well.
I love it. Now, Jorge, we're gonna kind of go to some final statements here. Our half hour is about up, but what I want to do, Jorge, is you're right in the thick of this identifying the perfect client for your product. And my guess is that you're probably doing, in all the research you're doing and the conversations you're having, you're trying to identify not only which type of client you want to serve, but how can I tweak my product to be an even better product for them? Can you walk us through your thought process as you're doing this? And then I want to ask Eric and Maurice to kind of jump in and add their thoughts to what you're dealing with as a launching business right now.
Yeah. It's interesting because I don't believe that a product is ever done.
I don't either.
And so, look at Twitter, right? I just go back to Twitter just 'cause I work there. I mean, that product, I remember going to the Twitter office in San Francisco, 2007. It was literally texting people SMS messages. I remember my buddy and I looking at it going, what is this? This is a waste of, time. But now, right? And so, so in terms of that process, I mean, that's the interesting thing is, you have people that would say, don't write a line of code. Of course, the world that I'm speaking to is from a software perspective. Don't write a line of code, literally create mock-up designs of those initial product concepts, show them to those personas or those avatars that you're doing the research against, and start to get their feedback on their from on whether they think it's valuable or not, and that's a very early stage. Right now, there's others that would say, you know what, give them something, because I've been on both sides, all sides actually, over 20 years now, right? So it's like, give them something to interact with, and so they can really feel, because kind of like the analogy is, hey, I showed you a drawing of a car versus, oh no, drive that car, right? There's a feeling, right, component to it. So it really depends, but it's all, whether you take that first option or the second option or a mixture of both. It's really important to be able to take that information, understand what you learn from it, right? And understand that there's going to be false positives, there's going to be false negatives, right? There's going to
Totally.
And then take the next step. And with software, then you take those, you look at the data and you say, okay, well, what do the numbers say? And then take the next step into, let's say, building a prototype, or in the industry, we call it like a minimum viable product, which is like the for everyone out there, it's the most basic product that is complete enough to solve something, but it's not a comprehensive thing. You don't go in, and I've done this before early in my career, where I went into a vacuum. My co-founders went, and I spent, months or a year building out some, product, and then introduce it to market and then realize nobody gave a shit, because most of the time nobody's going to care.
Right.
And then
that's a painful experience I've done as
yeah,
well.
right.
So I understand.
So building that inch by inch, and it's hard. Theoretically, it's like, oh yeah, I'll just figure out what people want and build that. It's very different. A lot of people will be nice and just be like, oh yeah, that's cool. But remember, it's this attention situation, right? Where you're trying to actually get people's attention to be able to use your product. And then from my perspective, be able to use it at work, right? And you can imagine if I use something at work that wastes my time or doesn't work, it's a problem, right? It's not like I'm home. If I buy a bad, I don't know, if I buy a bad sandwich, I can just throw it away or whatever, right? No, it's like, it's my job. If I buy something and go to bat for it and it doesn't work, or if I take time to use something and try to learn something. Adoption is a huge problem in software, right? There's so many options out there. Which one do you use? And even if you buy it, will you use it? So actually even spending that time to be able to figure out how to use a tool, there's an opportunity.
Right. I love it. And Jorge, I'm so excited for you. Honestly, I think that this launch and this, you're doing it the right way. I just love when founders think this far ahead and they're really trying to we've got a cool product. It's working. I want to make sure it's fitting the type of people we think it's going to fit. And I think what you're doing right now is such a critical point of launch. I wish you the best of success on this journey. Eric, any thoughts or advice coming from a 20-year-old brand and your constant, to Jorge's point, re-identifying the client and making sure they still like what you're doing? Any advice for Jorge on what he's doing right now in his stage?
Yeah, and this honestly doesn't just apply to Jorge or anybody going through a new launch or a product refresh. Don't get so focused on your ICP or your avatar that you lose sight of your influencers within companies as well. Because, quite often, especially in software, like I mentioned earlier, the end users, those would potentially be influencers. If they're going to their managers saying, hey, this sucks, I can't do my job properly, that could be the thing that triggers a full evaluation of your solution. So making sure that when you're building out those avatars, you break up your personas into who are the buyers, the decision makers, and who are the influencers that maybe I should still do a little bit of marketing to, so that when they complain, ideally they go, hey, this sucks, but I heard of this. And they bring that to their decision makers.
That's some great advice. And Eric, honestly, I think that your perspective has been super valuable today. I highly recommend, before we wrap up with Maurice, I really highly recommend any of you listening to this or watching this, connect with all three of these people, because they have got some great advice. They're all from three very different industries, but the simple practice of identifying your avatar, making sure you're solving their pain points, having solution statements that are very visible to them is so important. And Eric, I'm actually really intrigued to go look into your brand a little bit more after this call, because I want to see what you're doing. It's different watching a 20-year-old company versus a startup or launch phase. And even in Maurice's situation with 4 years in, what's he doing? I'm kind of eager to dive into this. So thank you so much for being here. Maurice, what are your kind of closing thoughts here on Jorge's scenario?
I love kind of what he's saying. He's like, you kind of, it's easy now, especially not to make it about like me or myself or like what the industry is, but there's so much kind of noise kind of coming in, especially ours is constantly growing. There's always so many different things to kind of gravitate to. And there's constantly different new avatars popping up as far as our industry. Like they want something faster, they want something more tech, they want more hands off.
Right.
Like when the pandemic and everything, everybody wanted to be at home. So everybody wanted to have workouts that they could do at home in their living room. So you had to scale everything down. You couldn't do what you had to do in a giant gym anymore. You had to screen everything down. But you realize that as much as the new things are coming in, what Jorge was kind of talking about, like, yes, your product, you're making constant adjustments to it. It may take some time to kind of do that. ours is kind of in a similar fashion that as new things keep coming in, it doesn't mean you take your focus off of what you're already working on, even though it's may not be at the point it needs to be, because the other things that are coming in that maybe popular might not last long. And you saw that would happen, that once everything opened back up, people weren't in the house no more. They wanted to get back out. So everyone had put so many people in our business had spent so much money on scaling down everything. And then with everything, especially here in Minnesota, because it's winter like 13 months out of the year. So when the sun finally comes up, everyone goes back outside. And we saw a lot of these trainers and gyms were like, oh no, we got away from our original product because we got attached to this thing. Because we were making a lot more money at that very specific time, not sure how long it was going to last. And if you overcommitted to this new thing and not what your current product was, as you were working on it, you're like, oh, but this looks more enticing over there. Let me grab that. And it was temporary. Oh no, I got away from that. So just hearing Jorge like, hey, you got to work on something sometimes for a year, even though other things are going on. You don't lose focus. You keep tinkering at it. You figure that. So like, that's the big takeaway. Just what he's doing, I think is great. Just that awareness and that focus to it.
And I think, Maurice, you bring up a really great point that we'll close with. And that is that, you know, while market conditions do change, it's all about maintaining that avatar relationship, that persona that you're trying to serve, and listening to the pain points, coming up with solutions. That's what Eric's been doing for 20 years, you know, with his company. And Jorge, that's what you're trying to do right now, is understand that right now immediate pain point is X. We got solution Y to solve that thing. And to Maurice's point, you know, market conditions are always changing. I mean, you were deeply affected by the pandemic, and I'm glad to see you made it through. You launched right at the wrong time, right before the pandemic, and now your gym survived though, and you made it.
Yep.
Congrats to you and all that you're doing. You know, for those that don't know, the Growth and Scaling Sessions has this sister thing with the Growth and Scaling podcast. I highly recommend you go take a listen to some episodes. They're 20-minute snippets of other founders talking about their entire growth journey from start to exit, some of them, and from start to, you know, many of them in the 100 million revenue points where we all want to be with our businesses. Fascinating stories, talking about very similar scenarios you guys have been talking about for the last half hour, which is nailing your avatar, truly understanding the pain points, and really delivering solution statements that convert. And so I appreciate all of you being here. For those that have watched, leave comments below in wherever you're watching this, and we look forward to engaging with you. Thank you so much for being here, you guys, and I appreciate all of your focused attention today.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you,